In this video, I'm going to share with you the #1 principle that has created pretty much all of my success, especially when I was building my business in the beginning. Almost nobody really fully understands this principle, so since they don't understand it, they can't implement it. And if you don't get this piece, you simply cannot succeed in business. That's how important I think this one is. And the thing is, it's based on embracing and utilizing a concept that almost everybody is trying to avoid. So once you understand this and start ferociously implementing it in your life and your business, I guarantee your success will explode. So we are simultaneously afraid of and drawn to quite often the exact same thing. In relationships, for instance, a lot of people are desiring connection while simultaneously being terrified of connection. Why? Because once upon a time, connection hurt them. And so if connection once upon a time hurt you, then your brain says, well, let's not ever do that again. And the best way to make sure somebody doesn't hurt your heart again is don't give it to them. Don't give it to them to be able to hurt. And the same concept is happening in our personal development journey. The things that we're afraid of, we were hurt by at some point in time, something like it. You know, people have a fear of doing videos, or people have a fear of public speaking, or people have a fear of sales. People have a fear of something. And that thing that you're afraid of is on the path toward the dream that's calling you forward, right? Well, the things that you're afraid of, it just simply means that some point in time in the past, something like that or that exact same thing hurt you. It caused embarrassment. It caused you to receive judgment. It caused financial loss. It caused emotional loss. It just caused something. And then our brain kicks in and says, well, how about we never do that again, right? So your brain is actually protecting you. Our brains, you know, the head talk, even the nasty, vicious head talk that shows up inside of us that reminds us of all of our failures, that tells us that we're not good enough, that tells us all the things that we're not able to do. Even that head talk is actually supporting us. It's supporting us to be happy, but it thinks happiness is staying safe. While the soul wants no part of safety. The soul derives no fulfillment from safety. Your soul will never be content with safety. Your head completely honors and values and is committed to safety. Your soul is stifled by safety. Your spirit wants to expand. Your spirit wants to know what you're capable of while you're here on this planet. Your brain wants to keep you protected from anything that might go wrong. Well, those two things are constantly battling each other. And your intellect is driven by knowledge to keep you safe from danger. Your spirit is driven by risk. It doesn't care about the dangers because your spirit knows that the greatest danger to its fulfillment is standing still. The brain thinks the greatest danger to its safety is taking action. So we have this perpetual, I was going to say dance. I mean, it is a dance. It can be a dance, but it feels more like a clash of the titans, right? For most of us. The problem is that the head usually has the mic. And when the head speaks, it yells. When the heart speaks, it whispers. So most of us are just simply hearing the yells of our intellect over the whispers of our spirit. And that's why we pay attention to the thing that has the microphone turned up louder more often. And we're programmed by society, by our parents, by pretty much all the inputs that we are plugged into. We're generally programmed to value safety. We're programmed to be averse to risk. So that's why so many of us pay more attention to the voice that says, stay still, because here is where you're the most safe, rather than the whisper that says, I'm dying here. Get in motion, because I need to know what it feels like to grow. I need to know what it feels like to expand. You see, our spirit is actually driven by challenge. It's driven by seeing what we can accomplish. But it just has to overpower the intellect's stronghold that uses fear to simply scare us away from the actions that our soul needs us to take. The fear actually, though, can't do anything to stop us from acting. Even though we hear the fears of our head, contrary to what a lot of people think, the fears of our head cannot stop us from acting. They can only scare us. But just like you can ignore any input you get from anybody else, you can also ignore your own. You can ignore the voice inside that says, I don't think you should do this. I don't think we can do this. If we do this, we're going to feel the same catastrophe that we felt last year or 10 years ago or when we were 5. But we don't actually have to listen to that voice. We have the power to ignore and act anyway. You know, I've never thought about it this way because the title of this is Ignorance on Fire is Better Than Knowledge on Ice. And I was going to talk about, and I still will talk about, what ignorance is. Ignorance is basically just not knowing, but the root of ignorance is ignore. So what if we were to ignore our ignorance and take action anyway? And really, that is the answer. If there was one internal mindset shift that I think we all need to make, and this is based on my 15 years in personal development, not just me going through it, but me coaching it as well and really studying the mind of the human. Why do we do the things that we do? Why do we not do the things that we know we should be doing? Most of it comes down to our relationship to these two voices in our head and what we choose to be more committed to. And we are primarily more committed to avoiding risk because of all the inputs based on ignorance. A lot of those risk-averse thoughts are based on ignorance. And you know what we typically ignore? How powerful we are. We typically ignore what we are capable of. And because so many of us ignore what we are capable of, we'll never experience it while we are alive until we start to ignore the ignorance. We have to ignore the doubts. We can listen to them because they all have a message for us. They have questions that need to be answered, but don't fall prey to them. Don't succumb to the influence of the ignorance. The ignorance is based on not knowing. The ignorance is based on doubts. So here's the question. How can you know something you haven't experienced? This is the essence of the mind shift that has to happen. Our ignorance is based on not knowing. Our dreams live in the realm of not knowing. So if we're using the fact that we don't know about the path or we don't know how it's going to turn out as a reason for us to not find out, that's a problem. The intellect demands that we know, the soul knows that we can't know. So which one are we going to be more committed to? People ask me sometimes, what is the one thing that really drove me to success? Because people are just asking all the time, like, what can I do, whether it's a coaching business or in my relationship or whatever it is that I want to create in the world. And people are looking for the secret. People are looking for the shortcuts. People are like, yeah, I know all the stuff that you teach, but what's the actual secret? If there was a secret, in my journey, it's ignorance on fire. I was willing to take action on ideas without needing to know if they were going to work or not. But most of our society, especially nowadays that we are flooded with information, we have so much connection to information, which makes the intellect go crazy, happy. The intellect loves all the access to information because the intellect believes if you're not achieving something, it's because you lack the knowledge. The intellect is literally a computer. So if you're not achieving something in your life, the intellect convinces us that it's due to the lack of knowledge. Therefore, the solution is more knowledge. But that's never the solution, especially in a purpose-driven path. It's never the solution. The solution is implementation of the information you already have. If you have this amount of information and you're not implementing it, putting more information on top of the pile that's already not being implemented is not the solution. In fact, all it does is make the pile higher and make the pile heavier. So if you're not implementing this right now, the worst thing you can do is increase that pile. The best thing you can do is probably decrease it. What is the information that you can pull out of all the collection that you've got right now stored in the head? What's the information that you can pull out and implement? Ignorance on fire is better than knowledge on ice, because ignorance on fire is in motion, is when you do whatever, when you do something. And most people are scared of taking action because they don't know of the right action to take. And you don't need to know the right action to take. I'll tell you right now, the wrong action to take is no action. So anything that you're doing right now, if it's not leading you to the life that you want, continuing this is the only wrong thing to do. It's the only wrong thing to do. Anything different than this recipe now is better if you don't have the life that you want, and especially if you're trying to develop something, if you're trying to give birth to something. If this is a purpose-driven path, bringing this thing out of yourself, that's a tall task for most of us, because showing the world who you really are is vulnerable. Showing the world who you really are is dangerous. It's emotionally dangerous to say this right here with no protection, with no layers, with no guard, with no fake, with no facade. This right here is me. What do you think of me? My God. I mean, I just felt that. Like just the thought of being emotionally naked in front of somebody else with your heart on the table for them to accept or deny, for them to embrace or abandon. That's the most terrifying thing for us. So anything that is driven by our purpose, anything that is fueled by our soul, has to get through our emotional obstacles and the fear of being seen for who we really are and still abandoned. That's why we tend to show the world who we aren't. We tend to make up the facades. I call them the not me's. If I can show you the not me, and the not me is designed to get you to like me, well then the real me can never be abandoned. But the problem with that is, if I keep convincing you and impressing you with the not me, then you never actually know or can fall in love with the real me. This is the shift that we have to take, and we have to understand that the real me is the only one that matters. The real me is the only one that you care about. The real me is the only one that you can live inside and feel fulfillment and feel happiness. The not me cannot create happiness. You cannot ever experience any fulfillment inside of any version of the not you. Inside of any fake version of you, there is no fulfillment there. Why? Because that not you doesn't have your heart in it. It doesn't have your soul in it. And that's where fulfillment and happiness and joy and bliss live. So this is all about the real you. And if the real you is dying to be birthed and actually dying and craving to be seen and heard, the only way that's going to happen is to ignore the ignorance of the mind, which is trying to keep that real you safe, because that real you was hurt one time. And so the mind thinks the way to make sure that the real me doesn't get hurt again is to never let her out again, is to never let him see the light in order to get burned again. That's what we think the answer is. That's what we think the answer is, but that's not what we know the answer is. There is no joy in not being seen. There is no joy in not being hurt. The true joy and the true purpose that you all have is to be seen. And if you get the judgments, if you get thrown the insults, if the things that you're really afraid of actually happen, the real joy on this planet is to know that it cannot destroy you. That the real you is absolutely so powerful that the intellectual attacks from other people can't stop you. They can't destroy you. They can't actually knock you all the way over. They might shake you a little bit. But the real you is so rooted that it can withstand the harshest winds. And essentially, that's all it is, right? It's just winds. If I say something to you, all it is I'm just blowing wind out of my face. But if you're so afraid of feeling the winds of judgment on your skin, then the only way to avoid that is make sure your skin is never seen. Make sure that your skin is never available to be blown on. But when you realize that the wind cannot penetrate the soil and it cannot touch the roots, then your roots cannot be affected by their winds. With a D, wind. And in today's world, it's real windy out there. It is real windy out there. There's so many people with keyboard courage, so many people with drive-by verbal shootings online. There's so many people that are so quick to judge. They're so quick to judge because they're projecting the dislike that they have for themselves. A person who loves and likes him or herself has no ammo to shoot at other people. So if you're the one that takes the self-inflicted wound from other people inside of the wind of their face, so be it. And the more rooted you are, the less affected you can be by the wounded wind of society. So we have to understand that ignorance is actually a sign of us going in the right direction. If you don't know what this path is going to be like, well, that means you've never been on it before. And there is no such thing as a comfortable path into uncharted territory. There's no such thing as a comfortable path or a known path or a familiar path into uncharted territory. So if you're trying to go somewhere you've never been before, there is no familiarity in that path. Therefore, when your brain says, I don't know if we can do it, say, thank you for confirming that I'm in the right direction. Because I don't want to just keep looping around all of the familiar paths of my life. All that gets me is right in the middle of the comfort zone that I've been trapped inside all this time. So the familiar path is actually a danger sign to the soul. It's a safety sign to the head, but it's a danger sign to the soul. When we start being more afraid of familiar than we are of unfamiliar, then we start opening up the channel to give birth to our purpose. But your purpose will never be birthed through comfort. Your purpose will never be birthed through familiarity. It's impossible. So instead of listening to the internal winds of your head that's saying, I don't know if I can do this, great. You don't need to know how the path is going to end. You don't need to know what the right thing is in terms of 100 steps down the road. All you need to know, and you don't need to know if you can do it. That's another loud phrase that we succumb to all the time. I don't know if I can do this. Great. I don't either. I don't know if I can do any of the stuff outside of my comfort zone. I don't know if you can do any of the stuff you haven't done before, but here's what I do know. I can take the step toward it. And you know what I've found? Usually the thing that I've decided I want to shoot for and the path that I've decided I'm going to follow to get there, usually those targets are wrong. So what's the point in getting it right when the target is wrong? And since we don't know what the target actually is, I want you to give no value to doing it right. And in fact, if you get it right according to your intellect, which has as its highest priority keeping you safe inside your comfort zone, I really want you to get this. If you get it right, according to your head, you're winning the wrong game. You're winning the game that is designed to keep you safe, not the game that's designed to give you freedom. So give no value to the rules of the game called keep me safe. Move that value to the rules of the game called give me freedom. Let me know who I am. Not even just so much what I can do, but who I am. And you can only be revealed through ignorant action. We have to get out of the intellectual game all in entirety. We have to get out of the intellectual game completely, all together, in order to play the purpose-driven game instead of the protection-driven game. So whichever one of those you're more committed to is going to determine your results in life, but it's really going to determine your experience of life. So give no value to getting it right, especially when the intellect gets everything wrong when it comes to who we truly are. So I want to leave you with that. And your self-reflection is, what's the familiar path or the familiar goal that you've been striving for that you know you need to let go of? What is that thing that your brain has told you, this is what I need to do, this is what I should be doing? And a lot of times you can catch those things according to the language that you hear. Your brain speaks in computerized, intellectual, rational language. Your brain talks about what you should do. Your brain talks about what you need to do. Your brain talks about avoiding the risks. Your brain has danger embedded inside of its language. If you start listening to it, you can pay attention and you can start to discern between the voice of your intellect and the voice of your intuition, or the voice of your head and the voice of your heart. But you got to pay attention to the words. You can't just avoid the words. That's what so many of us are doing. We're just la 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 la, just trying to avoid the doubts. No, the key to the liberation is right inside the package of the doubt. You got to open up the package to figure out what's actually going to lead to your liberation. So don't try to avoid the doubts. Engage them. Ask, what's the question that you're so concerned about? Dive into those doubts, because those doubts are going to go with you no matter where you are. If you bring your head with you, which I highly, highly suggest you do, then you will be bringing your doubts with you as well. And if you think that escaping this current comfort zone is going to lead to the absence of doubt when you get into another comfort zone, that's not true. You'll just have the doubts over there. They just might change their details a little bit. They might change the story a little bit, but the same process is essentially identical, right? No matter where we go in life, the brain still operates the same way. Just because you evolve to one level doesn't turn off the way the brain works. So this is really about understanding our relationship to our doubts, understanding our relationship to our fears, and learning to dance with them rather than turn them off. And my experience is the best way to do it is be driven by your ignorance, put it in motion, and don't value the knowledge. Ignorance on fire is better than knowledge on ice. How many of us have been collecting all this knowledge but not doing anything with it? Nobody has ever knowledged their way into fulfilling their purpose. Nobody has ever intellected their way into anything worthwhile in terms of experiencing life. Nobody has ever used their intellect to live a blissful, purpose-filled, joy-filled life. Why? Because joy and happiness and purpose don't live in the computer. They don't live there. We got to let this heart out. We got to give it oxygen. We got to put it in motion to learn the lessons we need to learn. And those lessons that we need to learn cannot be known to us right here where we stand. They will only be revealed to us when we get in motion and we are ready for them to be revealed. But our readiness doesn't come from intellectual collection. Our readiness comes from ignorant action. I'm going to leave you all on that today. Let me know what lands for you. I'd love to know what it is that you catch, that you've been searching for intellectually, that you just need to let go of trying to get that thing right because you don't even know if the target is right. And if you decide intellectually that the target is right, I can virtually guarantee you, you are wrong. Ignorance on fire, you guys, is way more valuable than knowledge on ice, especially when you're wanting to birth something from your heart, from your soul, and fulfill your purpose. I love you all. Now, if you like this video, check out that one, which is the full story of how I made over $300,000 in my first 18 months as a life coach. That's when you can really put your pedal to the metal, so to speak, and that's when you can scale up in a real big way. And I'll show you some of the numbers here in a little bit.